All right. So thanks for joining again. This is the second part to that first revision video. We'll be doing questions on the three topics we did, which is health and sanitation, electricity and lighting. I will do two questions on electricity and lighting, one on health and I think one on conservation of energy. All right. So this first question is based on health and sanitation, and it's from June 2010. So they're showing us figure 2 and 3, showing a dining room table before and after. Well, not the table, but dining room before and after. So just in case you can't see it properly, before the room is very clean. After you're seeing pets, you're seeing that the dishes are still there, which will I assume being dirty dishes because this is after dinner. So the space wasn't cleaned. So the first question, A, name two household pests that may be present in the dining room if it is habitually left overnight, as in figure 3, and give a reason for the presence of these pests. So your pests could be anything, right? I just put two random ones. I put the first pet could be pests, could be rats. The second one could be flies. And my reason for this was that the pests would be attracted to the leftover food found on the dishes that have not been removed after dinner. You could write down any other pests. We discussed a few pests, or mentioned, I should say, and the list of pests that we can give is extensive. So either ones or whatever you feel comfortable with putting, you can do that. All right. So these are just, I guess, model answers in a sense. The second part of this, and also look at the marks given, right? This is just 3 marks, so 1 mark for each. So that means it wasn't anything too hard to think about. Part B. Describe one way in which the pests named in A affects humans. So if we're talking about the rat urine can cause leptospirosis. If we're talking about roaches, right? So that's the next one we could have put instead of flies, we could have put roaches. I was supposed to put that there and I forgot. So we could put roaches. The roaches carry disease causing bacteria, which we said are pathogens, which can cause things like diarrhea, for example. Now, both of the reasons that I gave, if the dishes aren't washed properly and used after, persons can become sick. So, if you're not washing the dishes properly, or let's say a child picks a piece of food from whatever has been left over, if any roaches or rats or anything were crawling or feeding on that, then the child could become sick because of ingesting any of those pathogens that would have been either in the excrements of these pests or dropped off while the pests were passing. So it came off of them. Next, we have, why is it not going down? Right. Next, we have C. So give two methods for controlling household pests. We can have physical methods, we can also use chemical methods. So, physical methods like traps, the screens, house chemical methods, we can use bug spray, or we can have the poison that we put for like the rodents and all of those other things. Even like ants, beat, and all of these different things we put in the corner of the homes. So, D. Mosquitoes are carriers of dengue fever in many Caribbean countries. So remember, carriers, right? We looked at pathogens, we looked at hosts, and we looked at the definition for vectors. The mosquitoes are carriers of the pathogens that cause dengue fever, right? So remember, the mosquito is the vector in this case. So figure 4 shows the Smith's backyard. Identify one object which may encourage breeding of mosquitoes. So from this we're seeing a lot, but the main thing that stands out is the unattended tires that they just have spread here. There's also a lot of like vases and all of this with no covers. So if it collects water, then this could be a problem here. Then E, there's no medicine to treat the virus that causes dengue fever. So, suggest one way that the Smiths may assist in reducing the incidence of dengue fever. So, based on what answer you had put up here, if we're talking about tires, we can say they can remove the tires or put them in proper storage areas, and this will remove one of the breeding areas for the pests. Because on the inside of the tire, if water collects there, mosquitoes can breed there quite comfortably. F, name two other diseases spread by mosquitoes. So we know malaria, Zika, and there's also chikungunya. Then G, water from rainfall is collected from the roof in containers. So name two impurities that may be present in the water. So if you're collecting water from the roof, remember there could be bird droppings or any sort of microorganism that would be on the birds itself. We have bacteria, so that would fall in that. We also have rust from the roof, and there could be a lot of dust as well. H suggests two ways by which Mrs. Smith can make the water collected in the containers safe for drinking. So, one, if you're collecting it through PVC, so a funnel coming down, right, from the roof, what you can do is put a cloth on the end of the collecting tube to strain any large particles. Two, the second thing they can do is boil the water before drinking it. Three, they can also add the recommended amount of chlorine to the water to kill any sort of microorganisms that would be in it that can cause them harm. So that's the one question there for health and sanitation. Next, we want to look at this question for electricity and lighting. So I have two questions for this. One from this paper, and then we move to the next paper to get the second question. So we have figure 7 here shows the analog electricity meter of a household on the 30th of June 2008. So the first part is what is the function they're asking of an electric meter? And we use an electric meter to display or show how electricity or show how much electricity is being used by that household. Part 2, what is the reading on the meter shown in figure 7? So remember, we're starting at the far most left and we're moving to the right. And we're reading clockwise, then anti-clockwise. So the first point is 2, the second 3, the third one, and next 2, then 0, and then 9, right? So the reading is 23,209 kilowatt hours. The third part, the reading on the meter on June 1st, 2008 was 22,943 kilowatt hours. Calculate the amount of energy used during the month of June. So that's simply going to be at the end of June, you use that reading and you take away the reading that was at the beginning of the month to find out how much electricity was used during that space of time, which will give us 266 kilowatt hours. The fourth part, the power company determines that the cost of electricity is 70 cents for every kilowatt hour of of energy used. So calculate the cost of the electricity for the month of June. So remember the formula, the cost is going to be the energy used or the amount of energy used multiplied by the cost per kilowatt hour or the rate per hour, which is going to be 266 kilowatt hours multiplied by the 70 cents, which will give us $186.20. So I hope so far this is very easy. Then we have B. So table 2 below lists the wattage of some household items. So we have the items, the wattage, the time used per day in hours, and the energy consumption in kilowatt hours per day. Remember, please, to convert watts to kilowatts. This is already in hours, so we do not have to convert this, right? And if you did not convert this to watts while you were doing this, then you would figure out that it's very strange because how come 800 multiplied by 2 it will give you 1.6? This is supposed to be 1600. So then that should let that bulb light in your head. Oh wait, this is kilowatt hours, so I have to divide by 1,000, right? So it's best to just convert it over here to not confuse yourself at any point. So how would we find this? The energy consumption is wattage, which will convert to kilowatts, multiplied by the time used per day. So it's going to be zero point 0.9 multiplied by 24, which will give us 21.6. And B, we had to find out the time used. So I just wrote a little formula on the bottom here. So if energy consumption is equal to wattage multiplied by the time used per day, right? How would we find B? We'll just switch around the formula. So time used per day will be the energy consumption divided by the wattage, and that will give us um, the 3.9 divided by 1300 divided by 1000, which is 1.3, and that is going to give us 3 hours. Part 2. State three measures which the family of this household can implement to reduce the energy consumption. So we're looking at the energy consumption and which ones are the highest and how we can suggest that they could lessen their bill, right? So the first thing, look at the refrigerator. The refrigerator is something we know we can't unplug when we're not using, right? It has to be on 24/7. So that's why this is 24 hours here. But what we can do is reduce the amount of times we're opening the fridge. Because remember, the fridge has a system, right, where it's going to maintain a particular temperature. So let's say if it has to maintain that temperature of 20 degrees Celsius, whatever, right? Just a random thing. If we keep opening the fridge at random times or for a very long period of time, then the heat from the outside is going to be increasing the temperature in the fridge. So from that 20, it's going to go up to 25, 26, or even if it's just 21, right? And then when we close that fridge, then the fridge now has to work even harder to regulate its temperature to bring it back down to that 20 degrees Celsius. And that's going to pull more energy. So, one, avoid opening the refrigerator too often, as this causes an increase in the amount of electricity needed to get it back up to the correct temperature. The second thing, if we look at the light bulb, for 12 hours, right? Even though it's not much energy being consumed, but we could still break it down at this point by suggesting that you turn off the lights in rooms that are not occupied. And three, the electric kettle, even though it's just 3 hours they're using it for, look at how much energy is being consumed by that. So seeing that they didn't have stove here, meaning or suggesting they don't have an electric stove, right? So they're using a stove that utilizes gas as the energy source. So they can boil the water on the stove instead of using the electric kettle because we're talking about reducing energy consumption here. So, in case or in terms of the electricity, right? Any other one that you think could be added, you can put that as well. Then, part three here, which of the following is the most cost effective? Using the fan for 12 hours instead of 6 hours, or using the toaster oven for 2 hours, and explain your answer. So, to get your answer, you can't just say, well, I think we can work it out. So, using the fan for 6 hours, right? 6 hours uses zero point 0.6 kilowatt per hours per day. So if we bump this up to 12 hours, then that's going to be 1.2. Right? So you could do your little calculation on this side here. So it's zero point 0.1 kilowatt kilowatts multiplied by 12 hours, which will give you 1.2 kilowatt hours, right? And we're seeing here already calculated the amount of energy is that is used by the toaster, which is 1.6 kilowatt hours. So using the fan for 12 hours is actually more cost effective than using the toaster oven for 2 hours. Because even though the fan is being used for 12 hours, it's only pulling 1.2 kilowatt or using, sorry, 1.2 kilowatt hours. Um, but the end in terms of the energy, right? Whereas just for 2 hours, the toaster is using 1.6 kilowatt hours here. That's the amount of energy being consumed, right? The amount of energy consumption per day there. So we're saving, even though it's just 2 hours compared to 12 hours, this I'm using this appliance, which is the fan, for 12 hours, we are still zero point 0.4 kilowatt hours less in terms of energy consumption than using a toaster oven for just 2 hours. Then part C, distinguish between a switch and a fuse. So a switch is a piece of metal that completes a circuit, allowing the flow of electricity, while a fuse is a piece of wire placed in a circuit that melts if a certain amount of electricity or a certain current passes or crosses it. So very simple that they just gave 1 mark for that. Usually it might have been two, since there's two things you have to define here, but it's very simple, so just one. You can also word what fuse is differently. You can say it's a safety device placed in a circuit that will melt if a current beyond its capacity crosses it. Any way that you choose to define what a fuse is, but just make sure and have the relative or the important points there. And the last one for this question, some homes in the Caribbean are powered by solar energy. State the energy changes that take place in the homes when an electric toaster oven is used. So this is dealing with energy conversion here, right? So we're going from solar energy from the sun being captured and stored as electrical energy by the solar panel. Then this electric energy is converted into heat energy by the toaster oven to cook the bread or whatever is placed in it. And then the second question, this is from June 2017. So with this one, we had to actually draw um, a circuit, right? So 5, part 1. So in the space below, draw a circuit to test if a material is a conductor. And the circuit should consist of a switch, bulb, cell, and conducting wire. Now use circuit symbols in your drawings. I forgot to put where is the pen? Right, so I'll just put it in a different color. It shouldn't have the line running through it, right? It should actually just be a free space. Um, we'll put it here. Okay, so I'll just put it as yellow. So this is the piece of material that we're testing to see if it's a conductor, right? So we put it there, and that means that if the electricity is flowing, if this light um if the bulb lights, then the material is a conductor. If not, then it's an insulator, right? So we have this cell, the same thing I was saying about knowing the difference between a cell and a battery. So we want to know this is a cell. We have the material over here. We have the bulb, and well, all of the straight lines here. This is the connecting wires, which will obviously be made out of conducting material. 2, give one example of a good conductor of electricity and one example of a good insulator. There are many different examples you can give. as a good conductor, I just put iron. You can also put copper. And for good insulators, I put plastic or wood. So any other one you can think of, you can put it there. Very simple. Question three. Name one safety device used in circuits to prevent overloading and state how the device works. So that device would be a fuse, and how it works, it melts when a current that surpasses its capacity crosses it. Now, part B. So, Jenna's kitchen is flooded by a broken water line, and her blender's electrical cord is frayed or exposed. So, like this. And I know a lot of us are very familiar with this. Most of our chargers look like this, right? Because my current charger looks exactly like that. The struggles. But anyway, it still works. Even as a safety hazard, you shouldn't be using it, but what are we gonna do? Hmm. So the cord is exposed here, right? As shown in figure one. So one, they're saying suggest two hazards that may occur if Jenna attempts to connect the blender to an electrical outlet. So we have hazard one could be she could get electrocuted because we're talking about water and electricity here now, right? So she could get electrocuted or it could possibly start an electric fire if she has especially if she has things next to it that could you know be used as fuel, and well, in this case you have the electricity there, right? So part two, figure two shows the frayed electrical cord of the blender plugged into the electrical outlet. So suggest three pieces of protective wear which Jenna could use before attempting to remove this frayed cord. So I would say the first thing for sure is to use rubber insulating gloves. Two, she should wear some sort of long sleeve top. And you could also put like she should wear or could wear some sort of long sleeve, long pants, right? The third thing I put, which I wasn't too sure about, but then I was thinking in terms of talking about electricity, you want to protect your eyes, you want to protect your face. So she could wear some goggles here. If you had anything different, feel free to put it, right? Once it's a protective wear and it's something that we could use in the case of possible electrocution here or any sparking from electricity. Then three, Jenna notices that the three wires in the cord are blue, brown, and green, right? So to which part of the circuit should she connect each wire when rewiring the plug? And write your answer in the following table. So the blue we know is the neutral, brown is the live, and the green and yellow, or in this case green, is the earth wire. And that's the end of the two questions I had for electricity and lighting. We'll go back to 2010. And question six will help us with the conservation of energy now. So A, explain the concept of the conservation of linear momentum. So we know the theory is that in a closed system, the total momentum before collision is equal to the total momentum after collision. And this means that once there's no external input, then the momentum of the two objects that collide remains the same as it was before the collision. Then B, trolley 8, figure 8 shows a trolley of mass 20 kilograms moving at a speed of 2 meters per second. And the trolley collides with a stationary toy truck of mass 10 kilograms. So, one, state two possible results of this collision. Before we go on, one thing I forgot to mention, or probably deliberately didn't mention because I knew I would mention it here, is we have to um we have to assign which direction is going to be positive and which direction is going to be negative. So there's no rule stating that the object moving to the left or the object moving to the right has to be a particular thing, right? It's whichever one we prefer, and that helps us when it comes to the calculations. So please always make sure to assign one as the negative direction and one as the positive and work with that. So one, state two possible results of this collision. So remember we said we have elastic and inelastic collision, right? So the trolley can come to a complete stop, or two, the trolley can stop moving and the truck can move in the direction the trolley was moving in, because we have the transfer of energy in this case, right? Then part two, calculate the momentum of the truck if it was moving at a speed of 4 meters per second towards the trolley. So remember, again, just a hint here to decide which will be positive and negative in terms of the direction. The formula, P equal mv, which is momentum is equal to mass by velocity. So that's going to be 10 kilograms multiplied by negative 4 meters per second. And it's negative because I assigned the direction of the toy truck as the negative, right? So the answer is negative 40 kilogram meters per second. Then three, sorry, state two possible results of the collision between the truck moving at the speed in B and the trolley. So we have to calculate that of the trolley, the momentum, which is 20 kilograms by 2 meters per second, which is going to give us 40 kilogram meters per second. And I put the plus sign as this is the positive direction that I had assigned here. So what is two possible results that can happen? We have 40, we have negative 40 kilogram meters per second and positive 40 kilogram meters per second coming into each other. So what could happen? Both could come to a stop while colliding, or we could have elastic collision where the both of them bounce apart going in the opposite direction. Then part C, one, define the term energy and state the unit of energy. So energy is the ability to do work. The unit of energy is the joule. And what's the symbol for the unit of energy? Capital G. Easy 3 marks. Now D, state the forms of energy present at 1, which is before, 2, during, and 3, after the trolley collides with the stationary truck. So remember, energy due to movement, that's before it's moving, right? So that's kinetic energy. Then when it hits the truck, that stationary truck, you'd hear a sound, right? So we have that kinetic energy being converted into sound energy from the collision or the crash. And then after, remember, if it stops, when it comes to a stop, then it's no longer moving. So it has potential energy, right? As it is still or not in motion. And E, the toy truck possesses gravitational potential energy. So explain where this energy comes from. So remember from the diagram we were looking at, we said gravitational potential energy comes from an object being a distance from the Earth's surface or the Earth's crust. Well, the Earth's surface, right? So that means, or this is suggesting that the toy truck is not on the ground, it's at a height. So, for example, it could be on a table, and that's why it would have gravitational potential energy. So those are the questions that I wanted to go through based on health and sanitation, electricity and lighting, and the conservation of energy. So I do hope that this was, of some help to you. And remember, what we have coming up next is the revision session for metals and non-metals, terrestrial environment, water and aquatic environment, and fossil fuels and alternative sources of energy. And in a separate video, or the part two of that video, will be the past paper questions, just as we are doing here, because I have them already at the top here. So thanks for staying with me, and I do hope that this helps in some form or fashion with your revision for your exams. Bye.